Clemson improves to 6-4 with a blowout win over rival Georgia Tech. Clemson came in as favorites, and coming off of their win against Notre Dame, you felt pretty good, but it didn't start great for Clemson. 2 drives where the offensive line struggled. They couldn't run the ball, and things weren't looking great. And then Coach Sweeney elected to go for a very strange fake punt on 4th and 9. Clemson did not get it. They gave the ball to Georgia Tech on their own 25-yard line. Georgia Tech in 4 plays goes down and scores to take a 7-0 lead. And I definitely had some negative feelings there. I thought it was a very strange decision. I know Coach Sweeney's never been a mastermind at the analytics and in-game decision-making. More of a build the culture, bringing the right guys, bringing the right coaches as well for a long time. But you still hate to see a move like that to fall down 7-0. I was definitely worried, but Clemson scored 42 straight points to blow out the rival Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, the 9th straight win in the rivalry series. So let's dive into the game. First thing of note, and really pretty much the only negative thing you could say, is that Clemson's offensive line struggled, especially early. Mitchell Mays had to come in and take over for Harris Sewell. Sadler played some left guard. A couple guys just really scored poorly according to PFF and, frankly, the eye test. Trent Howard only had a 50.8 PFF grade in 39 snaps. Obviously, that's pretty bad. Harris Sewell, not much better at 52.2. Tristan Lee played 70 snaps, had a 55.4 PFF grade, a little bit below his 58.7 that he has on the season. And Mitchell Mays, who came in, as mentioned, he only had a 59.3, so better than Sewell's 52.2, but still not great. So 4 guys scoring below a 60 is pretty discouraging. But Colin Sadler was great, 76.5 PFF grade, well above what he's been on the year, and that's at a new position at left guard. So we'll see if he can build and become a stalwart there. And then Blake Miller, great game, 70 snaps, 78.3 PFF grade, really, really strong performance. And Will Putnam kind of does what he always does. He was solid, not spectacular, 66.3. That's also his overall grade on the year. One thing that's interesting of note, the 66.3 is his worst grade since the 2020 season, not for an individual game, but for the year. So he's a guy who's a big-time 4-star, and he just didn't get better throughout his career. He's solid. He's a good, solid player. Clemson will definitely miss him. But I just wish you'd see offensive linemen at Clemson, straight line, kind of linear progression. And obviously, it's never going to be quite that perfect and that linear, but, I just want to see guys get better throughout their time. And you're just not seeing as much on the offensive line. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens this offseason at the offensive line. They've got a lot of guys coming back. Marcus Tate should be back for a senior season. Walker Parks should be back after getting hurt this year. Where do those guys plug in? How do they shuffle guys around? Do they bring in someone else? Going to be a lot of competition next year, and they've got to get better if they're going to compete for the now 12-team or next year 12-team playoff. That's where we'll need to see a lot of improvement. So we outlined 2 things to watch in our preview of this game. And the first one was at the running back position. Shipley's coming back from that concussion and kind of neck injury that he suffered against NC State, missed the Notre Dame game, and Phil Mafah was the hero for the offense of the Notre Dame game. Coach Sweeney kind of implied that Mafah would start, but did you believe it? Well, yeah, you should have, because Mafah had 17 carries for 96 yards. He had the first 2 series, and he was the starter and the lead back. He had 1 catch for 19 yards, 96 yards total with a 5.6 yards per carry. I thought he was very good. The offensive line really struggled early, and so those first 2 drives were kind of a waste almost for him. Should have been 3 and outs, but 3 and out and a turnover on downs with a punt or the fake punt. But Shipley was great. He only had 11 carries, but they went for 77 yards. So 7 yards per carry, had a touchdown. He also had 3 catches. I think that's a pretty good split for those 2. Mafah is the more effective between the tackles runner, but Shipley is very useful. Should be getting plenty of carries, but also use him in the passing game. Love to see 3 catches, 30 yards. Let's see that continue to expand. Those carry numbers don't sound that high, but that's because Dominic Thomas and Keith Adams Jr. came in garbage time. Each had, Dominic Thomas actually runs really well. He wasn't quite in garbage time, but they combined for another 8. So in total, running backs had 36 carries, quarterbacks had 36 passes. So very balanced attack. The offensive line wasn't great early, which led to a little bit more passing. Otherwise, I think it would have leaned a little bit more on the running game. But overall, a strong performance from the running backs and from the offense in general. Pretty happy to see the way that they split up carries there. Cade Klubnik was the other. His performance was the other thing we were keeping an eye on, and that I mentioned in the preview. And he looked better. He looked better than he did in the win over Notre Dame, where he had barely over 100 yards. This one, he basically doubles that, goes over 200, 23 for 34 for 68% completion percentage, which that was great. 4 touchdowns to only 1 pick. And it was interesting. The announcers went on and on whenever he'd make a great pass, and he had a couple that were just really outstanding about how they see the elite potential. Wow, you could really see it. But then he'd make a boneheaded play. The interception was kind of a bad one. Guy was not open. He forced it to him, and defender undercut the route and took the pick. So you got to see him be more consistent, but you're seeing flashes. So you can't give up on him because you see how good he could be. And hopefully with another year, hopefully with better wide receiver play next year, better offensive line play, hopefully next year, you could see him take a big step with all the experience from this season. And, I've dogged the wide receiver play for really 4 years, even going back to 2020 before Cornell Powell broke out. But Bo Collins deserves some kudos. I thought he was pretty impressive. 5 catches, 65 yards, and a touchdown. He's not going to be the number one guy who's going to win deep balls because he's just not that fast. But he made some really good plays. Had the most yardage of Clemson receivers again in this one. So kudos to him. Tyler Brown stole the show though. Seven receptions, 41 yards, but one of them for the touchdown with a one-handed catch, kind of jumping backwards with his hand outstretched or his arm outstretched was just outstanding. You get him back obviously for sophomore year next year. Antonio Williams, hopefully he comes back for the Palmetto Bowl this year, but you got those two and presumably Bo Collins, all 3 of them back. You're going to add Bryant Wesco as a freshman. You're going to add TJ Moore as a freshman, and hopefully one stud outside receiver transfer. Maybe the wide receiver room can get pretty decent, not to mention Cole Turner and Troy Stellato. If they do that, they could be decent. Adam Randall only had 6 yards. He had a pass interference, an offensive pass interference. You got to wonder what his future is at Clemson. As he just, last year he wrote it off to an injury. We're pretty deep into this year. I don't know if it's in his head because of the injury or if he was just never really going to pan out. But it seems like kind of the optimism for, a lot of people. I posted a poll before the season. Would Clemson have a 1,000-yard receiver? Most Clemson fans said yes, and a lot of them said Bo, but a lot of them also said Adam Randall. So there was a ton of optimism even after last year's not great year. There's still a lot of optimism for Adam Randall, but that's largely dissipated now. One bummer from this game on the offense was Sajan as he tore his ACL. So Sapp will elevate to the second string tight end, and it's not a huge receiving threat, but a solid blocker. So you hate to lose him, and frankly, just hate to see anyone have that injury because that's just miserable, painful kind of rehab coming now for him. Hey, before I flip it over to the defense, just want to remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. And if you've already subscribed to this channel, thank you so much. Please like this video. All right, let's talk about this defense. Defense was awesome. And it was the freshmen who stood out, freshmen in the secondary in particular. Kylon Griffin and Khalil Barnes at safety both had picks. Both of them, it was their second picks of the year. Kylon Griffin redshirted last year, so he's really a redshirt freshman. He seems like he could compete for big time snaps next year. He was only a 3-star out of Alabama, but he's been looking good lately. And then Khalil Barnes has looked awesome all season as his role, both as a nickel and a true safety when needed, has expanded, and he's going to play a big role in 2024. And then don't forget Sherrod Koval, who has the knee injury now, but presumably he's back next year. He was a big-time recruit who looked decent at times when he was healthy. Tyler Venables should be back maybe next week. I don't know how much you expect from him in terms of upside for 2024, but he brings some stability to the room if he's healthy. And then RJ Mickens, is he back? He's been banged up. He had I think it was an appendix. So he's missed some time. I don't know that he's a surefire guy who's going off to the NFL. I thought he may be coming into the year, and I love RJ Mickens. I think he's one of the more underrated players on the defense, but I think we could possibly see him come back. I think Mukuba's gone, but that's 5 guys right there with Kylon Griffin, Khalil Barnes, Sherrod Koval, Tyler Venables, and Mickens. 5 guys at safety you feel really good about that. A lot of people, and I think rightfully so, have a lot of questions about some of the Dabo's friends hires on this coaching staff. But Mickey Conn has proven it. He's a very good safeties coach. He brings in a lot of talent. They got more talent coming in next year. Ricardo Jones out of the Macon area. I think it's a great safety room next year. I think Mickey Conn's done a great job. But cornerback's even better. I think Mike Reed is the best position coach on the team. Maybe the best cornerbacks coach in the entire country. And they've got an awesome group. Avieon Terrell and Shelton Lewis both had interceptions. Shelton Lewis ran his back. Avieon Terrell, little brother of AJ Terrell, he looks like he's going to compete for starting snaps next season. And they've got Jaden Lucas and Toriano Pride back. But those 4, man, no position is locked down there. All 4 of those guys are awesome. Even with Wiggins and Sheridan Jones leaving, I think they're going to be fine at cornerback next year. So those are 2 positions. They're going to lose a lot off that defense, but you feel good with some of these young guys. And I think Wes Goodwin, he received a lot of criticism earlier in the year. And frankly, the drive before half of the Florida State game where they went prevent and they allowed that touchdown, that he got a lot of criticism for that, and deservingly so. But overall, he's shaping up to be a very, very good DC. And I think he can continue more or less what Venables left off, an elite defense. The recruits an elite level. We're not seeing that recruiting drop at all. And we're really not seeing the performance drop too much, at least not after, the secondary wasn't as good last year, but they're right back to where you want them to be this year. So they'll lose a lot of guys, but I'm optimistic about Wes Goodwin and his defense for next year. One note on cornerback, Miles Oliver will be a redshirt sophomore next year, and he's got potentially 4 guys, including 2 guys younger than him next year. What does he do? I know he was hurt last year. Is he like a Ryan Carter who sticks around and then contributes late in his career? So that's another name to watch. But overall, this is the 9th straight win in the rivalry, like I said, and it's a legit rivalry. Once Clemson lost to Miami, my mindset was this year is all about just what do we see for next year, except for let's beat our rivals. Obviously, they lost to Textile Bowl to NC State the next week, but now they've beaten Georgia Tech. UNC is not much of a rivalry game, but then win the Palmetto Bowl. Those are the games I care about most when there's not really anything else on the line. So good to pick up a rivalry win. Georgia Tech actually holds the all-time series lead by a pretty wide margin at 50-36 and 2 ties, but most of that is like pre-70s when Clemson was going to Atlanta every single year. Since they started playing every single year without missing, back and forth, home and home, that was in 1983 when that started. Clemson's actually 25-17, leading the series. It's a shame that the series won't be every year moving forward with Cal, Stanford, SMU joining the conference. It's not a protected rivalry anymore. I imagine Georgia Tech didn't want to have to play Clemson and Georgia every single year anymore. So I don't blame them. I would prefer Clemson play Georgia Tech every year over pretty much any opponent. Admittedly, partly because I live in the Metro Atlanta area, but also that's just a classic rivalry, especially for me. The first Clemson game I ever went to, 2006, the CJ Spiller College Game Day game. First road game I ever went to was that very next year at Georgia Tech. Up until COVID, I never missed a Clemson Georgia Tech home or road game for any reason. And I'm just a little sad that they won't play every year, ongoing. But at least if this is the last one for a while, they'll play back at Death Valley 2026. They'll play in Atlanta, I believe, in 2025. So, if these schedules hold, which they are proving to not hold very long with all the conference shakeups, and we'll see if Clemson's even in the ACC in 2026 when they're slated to come back. But if this is their last trip to Death Valley for a while, at least it was a 3-touchdown win over the Yellow Jackets. All right, again, hey, if you haven't already, please like this video. I appreciate you watching. Let's talk a little basketball here before we wrap up. Clemson is 3-0 in basketball, and 2 really, really stressful wins in Asheville to win the Asheville Championship. So they won the early season tournament. They didn't end up playing Maryland because Maryland lost to Davidson in the opener, or their opener. So Clemson ended up playing UAB and then facing off against Davidson in the championship game. UAB was a 77-76 win, really tight. back and forth, really exciting at the end. And that one, the story was PJ Hall just had to carry the team. Joe Girard and Alex Hemingway, they didn't make their 3-pointers. You can't really have them both on the court as much as they do if they're not making shots. That's their role. And so it put Clemson in a tough spot with Hall and Shefflin, and then late in the game, Chase Hunter basically having to carry the team. PJ Hall had 27 points. He had a huge 3-point play very late in the game that gave Clemson a 2-point lead. But then Butta Johnson for UAB immediately nailed a 3-pointer with I think it was 9 seconds to go. They give the ball to Chase Hunter. He drives all the way down the court, gets fouled, makes both free throws to give him a 1-point lead, and UAB never got a shot off, or not a decent one. So great win there in the opener. UAB ended up beating Maryland in the third place game. So that's looking like a pretty good win for Clemson right now. And then Sunday at 3 p.m. on ESPN2, Clemson played Davidson, who had beat Maryland in their first game. And they fell down 23-5. It was an 18-point deficit. Things were looking really bleak. Josh Beadle, actually, of all people, came off the bench and really sparked the comeback, and Clemson kind of found their footing, started working their way back, eventually went on a run, and really in a reversal of the first, especially the first game of the tournament, Joe Girard and Alex Hemingway started knocking down threes. They missed their first couple of the game and looked pretty bad again. And I'll definitely admit, it crossed my mind that, like, what's up with Joe Girard? Is he not healthy? Is he not fitting in this team or this offense? He has got so many career threes. I think the stat was he has more career threes made than the rest of the Clemson roster. He couldn't buy it. He couldn't find the net at all. But then they started falling, and you saw the confidence. He ended up with 17 points, tied with PJ Hall for the most on the team or in the game, and they started rolling, and they stormed back. They went from down 9 at one point to shooting up to be up 9, and then they kind of blew the lead and needed some big plays down the stretch, but Clemson hung on for a 68-65 win to get to 3-0. Ian Shefflin, a guy I really like a lot. He kind of struggled. He had no points, picked up a handful of personal fouls, did have 7 rebounds, but was pretty much outplayed by RJ Godfrey off the bench, who played more minutes at 27 and had 10 points, 7 rebounds. I think Godfrey looks very ready to contribute. We're going to need to see more from Chauncey Wiggins, who only played 3 minutes, didn't score. Jack Clark, oddly, only played 5 minutes. So I don't know if we'll learn more about what's going on there. It's surprising to see both of them, two big 6'10" guys who are kind of they're long, but they almost play like guards despite their height. Peculiar, interesting to see them play so little, and Hemingway sort of take their minutes. You saw Hemingway and Girard on the court together, which seems counterintuitive that they would play together, but they did, and it worked. So Clemson is 3-0, and they will play Boise State next Sunday. Boise State is already 2-0. They were a 10 seed in last year's tournament, so certainly a quality opponent, and would be another quality win if Clemson can defend their home court. So good news on the football front and great news on the basketball front. So until next week, or actually sooner, we'll actually have a guest on to talk about the UNC game. At least that's the plan. So be sure to stay tuned. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. And as always, go Tigers.